بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. It says part one, various matters of doctrine, explaining the corruption found in the scales of modern day charges of disbelief and misguidance. So, a very simple situation. Why do Muslims disagree? We disagree because some proofs are qat'i and some proofs are dhanni. Some proofs in the Quran and Hadith are crystal clear. Some proofs in the Quran and Hadith are not crystal clear. That goes back to two variables, the language used and the level of authenticity, the level of historical accuracy, right? So here's a hadith that's found in Sahih Bukhari. The very fact that it's only in Sahih Bukhari and it's not mutawatir, it's not mass transmitted, it's not known, it wasn't widespread, the first generation, second generation, etc., that everybody knew about it, right? It means that there's going to be debate on it. That's just the nature of things. So somebody debating on a Sahih hadith is like, hang on a minute, this hadith is just Sahih, right? I mean, it's Sahih, meaning by default it's true, but it wasn't something that was widely known to everybody. It's not a historical fact that the Prophet said it. He most likely said it, as opposed to something that's mutawatir, so that's mass transmitted historical fact, like the whole Quran, like certain hadith, certain concepts, and from the from the deen. This is mass transmitted. There's no doubt, there's no question about it. So then here's an example, and then interpretation, of course, right? Language. So, just throwing it out there, Shiism, is every single thing about Shiism kufr? No, of course it isn't. There's lots of things in Shiism, like there's a basis for that, right? Didn't the Prophet ﷺ say that Ali is to me what Harun was to Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam? So it sounds like basically he's a prophet. That's what it sounds like, at least, right? The hadith, I've left two things among you that if you hold tight to them, you will never go astray. One version mentions the Quran and the Sunnah. Another one mentions the Quran and my family, Ahl Bayt, right? And there's countless ahadith about Ahl Bayt, so many things. And so there's genuine room for some of these interpretations. Now, I'm not saying that Shiism is correct, but I'm saying that when you're so extreme that um, 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 when you're so extreme that there's no basis for what you're saying whatsoever, it's because you're ignorant, right? You're ignorant. Or there's no basis for Salafism, or no basis for not following the form of their him. Of course, there's a basis for not following the form of their him. The default is taqleed is invalid, right? The default is you have to follow. You have to do independent research into what the Prophet said and what Allah said in the Quran. That is the default, right? So somebody coming along and saying something like, this is stupid, there's baseless, it's crazy. That's not true, but it might be incorrect though. But I'm not saying Shiism is correct, but I'm saying that we need to kind of understand where it's coming from. Shias praying 3 times a day, right? Salafis praying 3 times a day. That's what I saw Salafis doing in Jordan, right? Throughout the whole winter. And because it was mildly cold, they were joining Dhuhr and Asr every day. But there is a hadith, it is sahih, and it's not just sahih, it's super sahih. So, what I'm trying to say is we debate issues for ridiculous reasons sometimes, right? Sometimes it's ridiculous. Most of the time, it's not ridiculous. There's a genuine reason for that. The Khawarij read the Quran. It's not 100% clear in the Quran, not 100% clear in the Quran that if you do sins, you're a believer. It's not 100% clear. It is clear. It's not 100% clear. And, seems there's a lot of verses that you can interpret in a certain way to say, yeah, if you commit a major sin, you're a kafir. Okay. Right. So what I'm trying to say is we debate because there are things that are categorical and crystal clear, and the things that are not crystal clear. Not crystal clear because the language is not crystal clear, and because it's not crystal clear that the Prophet actually said these words, although those words were not abrogated, right? And so once we have that in our heads, we can start to have a healthy conversation. But when I jump to say kafir, 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 and I jump to this conclusion, I don't understand, for example, that when we say Sahih Hadith, meaning it's most likely accurate, not that it is. And when I read the words, I don't understand that it could possibly understood be in another way. When I don't have that skill set in my head, it's very easy to do kufr, just to label people as kuffar because I can't see anything else. I can't see any other way. It just doesn't come to my head. And then the more I research, the more I get surprised of how liberal certain things are or how this or that. And then you realize things are way more complex than I imagined. Yeah. So here's another thing about it. There's two forms of ghulu, two forms of extremism. Is treating something dhanni as qat'i, right? Everybody knows that the Qibla in North America is east. And anybody who says otherwise is either stupid or a kafir. That kind of language is not, right? Oversimplification. Oversimplification. Or it's obviously this direction because look, that's obviously the shortest distance between the 2 points is this. It's not obvious. It's not obvious, and that's why there's debate. Right? So is it dhanni or is it qat'i? You see? So now treating something as dhanni, something that is, there's genuinely room for debate on this issue. The ayah is not that crystal clear, right? It's dhanni, it's probabilistic. It's not 100%. Treating it as qat'i, treating it as categorical is ghulu, is extremism. Okay, while the other side of ghulu, treating something that is probabilistic as wahmi, right? Treating something that is dhanni, that is, this is a genuine proof. Like, I mean, I read it, there is evidence that I should be doing this. And then you treat it as wahmi. You treat it as, who knows, right? The verses of hijab, are they crystal clear? No, okay, ignore it then. So that's extremism as well. So, you can find holes in every single argument somewhere and make it a dhanni. That's true. It's very easy to pull it down from categorical to probabilistic. It's very easy. But it's not, but that doesn't make it pointless. And so people who come along and say, oh, there's debate. Okay, don't worry about it. That's wrong, right? That's wrong. So we need to know then, A, where there's lines in terms of its debate itself, and B, what have the majority of ulama said? We have these two levels to look at, right? So is there somebody who's joining prayers every day for no reason? I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying you're most likely wrong. I'm saying that for two reasons. Number one, the evidence. Number two, 90% of the 99% of the ummah have not said that. So that's another discussion, inshallah. But when it comes to aqeedah, it's simple. Like, I'm not going to call you out, I'm not going to call you a kafir until it's crystal clear. You are definitely do not agree with the message of Islam because we know the Prophet said these words and we know exactly what it meant, and you just don't believe it, period. But most people are not like that. These people say, no, it doesn't mean that, or I don't think he said it, etc. So, warning from careless accusations of disbelief. Many people err, may Allah rectify them, in their understanding of the real reasons that expel one from the fold of Islam and necessitate the ruling of disbelief. You see them rushing headlong in judging a Muslim to be a disbeliever due to the mere contravention of the Sharia. They just say haram, to the point where, in their view, there no longer remains a Muslim on the face of the earth, save a few. Out of good thoughts for them, right? And so there's a key thing. We see it, unfortunately, with many scholars as well. There are certain scholars that have this mentality. Not that people are kuffar, but it's the cancel culture, right? It's like, brother, do you have a PhD? No. Oh, he doesn't have a PhD. So like, he can't be a scholar. Oh, have you studied the 6 books? No. Oh, did you go to my madrasa? No. Okay, then no. Right. Have you studied mantiq? I say no. Okay, then you're just not a scholar. Khalas. You don't count, right? And so you find people sometimes in the beginning levels of education, and sometimes shuyukh can be like this as well, where it's just cancel people. Like if you're not this, you just don't count, period. If you haven't done this, you just don't count. And a lot of these, again, making something categorical that's not categorical. If you haven't memorized this, you just don't count, right? You're just non-existent. Whereas a lot of this is just not, it's not useful. So you see with Ba'an scholars is that they appreciate the contributions of all sorts of people. They might not rely on certain people, but they appreciate the contributions. So someone like Sheikh Muhammad Awama, right? Great Hadith, Hanafi scholar of Saudi Arabia, is now believes in Turkey right now, I think. Um, he's quoting Ibn Taymiyyah all the time. Why are you quoting Ibn Taymiyyah? That's really weird. Ibn Taymiyyah has ideas, true, he has ideas, but he also has knowledge. As the Makhshari, as a Mu'tazili, he has ideas, yeah, but he also has knowledge, right? One of my teachers be quoting Shi'i tafsirs all the time. I say, well, why are you doing that? It's like, yeah, because they're good on this point or good on that point. So this idea of totally canceling people, if you don't fulfill this exacting list of criterion of being 100% legitimate, then you are 100% illegitimate. Like you are just wrong. You just don't count, right? So and so Sufi, cancel him. So and so Salafi, cancel him. So and so Deobandi, cancel him. So and so Pakistani, cancel him. So and so white sheikh, cancel him. So and so, and he's hasn't studied university, cancel him. So and so doesn't understand the modern world, cancel. This is not, it's just not very useful. And it's not useful. It's not accurate. Okay. Out of good thoughts for them, we search for an excuse and say perhaps their intention is good, in that their motive is to fulfill the obligation of enjoining the good and forbidding the evil. However, what has escaped them is that the obligation of commanding the good and forbidding the evil must be carried out with wisdom and get good exhortation, right? And so it has to be done in the right way. So there's again two extremes. It's okay. There's a rukhsa for every single thing that happens out there, right? You know, the whole Muslim world listens to music. It's okay. It's halal according to some people. It's not the whole Muslim world listens to music. The whole Muslim world listens to haram music, like clearly haram music, right? The music that harms their akhlaq and harms their deen. So there's a difference. So coming along and saying, oh, we shouldn't label people as kuffar and we should accept every single thing that everybody does is wrong. And the other extreme is label them as kuffar. Rather, it's in the middle and say, you are not kuffar, but you are doing haram things. This should stop, right? This should stop. This is wrong. If enjoining the good requires argumentation, I debate it must be done in a way that's best, as Allah has said, invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good exhortation, and argue with them in a way that is better, that is more likely to be accepted and closer to obtaining what is hoped for. Opposing this is a mistake and foolishness. Just canceling people is not useful. People don't benefit from that. So if you invite a Muslim who prays, carries out the obligations of Allah, abstains from what has forbidden, um, invites to his religion, builds his houses of worship and schools, to accept something that you believe to be truth, while his views it differently, the opinion of Islamic scholars affirming and denying it has been divided since time immemorial as an issue of debate, genuine debate. If he then doesn't heed your opinion or accuse him, or you accuse him of disbelief due to his mere disagreement in opinion, you have committed an ugly enormity, uh, brought a grievous matter that Allah forbade you. So the translation should say done. Ataita bihi means to do something. Having rather called you to criticize with wisdom, right? Uh, criticize you with wisdom and goodness, right? So you're the issue that is debated, right? And it shouldn't be, and so we should say, people look at things in different ways. Okay, so now there's two levels of debate. One is, brother, I've studied them different madhahib, and I'm personally convinced that the Maliki madhab is the better of the four madhahib, and so that's why I pray like this. That's A. So now in this scenario, there's definitely no place at all. Like, brother, I understand this discussion and I understand. I think this is stronger, so I'm going to do this. It's fine. One level. The other level is I don't even know what I'm doing anyway. I don't even know what Maliki is. I don't even know what Hanafi is. I just do random stuff. Right? I'm just new to the deen or new to kind of technical. I don't even know what you're talking about. Right? So that's a totally different thing. That's not about someone's freedom. That's just about guiding people in general. Like, you know, hey, I'm new to this stuff, and like I didn't know you don't do that, or you do that, or whatever. It's a totally different thing, and and also as long as you're not critical, you can be fine. You can say, brother, I understand you are, you know, you want to do that. And I'm not telling you saying you're a bad person. I'm saying I advise you do something else. It's fine. For example, there's a sister. She just came from Birmingham, and she wears niqab in Birmingham, right? And she turns up in New York, right? Maybe New York, it's okay. She turns up in San Francisco, wearing a niqab in San Francisco. That's very odd and most likely not wise. So you have a right to tell her no. You don't have a right. She's like, no, this is the fatwa of these Deobandi scholars or these Yemeni scholars or whatever it is. And this is the Shafi school, whatever it is she wants to do. You have no right to come and tell her she's backward or she's weird. But you might advise her, say, sister, I've been in California for 15 years and I understand what you're doing. I value it. Great, mashallah. There are other opinions, and just my personal advice is to do this. Are you allowed to do that? Are you allowed to express your personal advice to somebody when? As long as you don't slam people and mock people, right? And again, let's say in that issue, some people are like, I've never heard of niqab in my life, or I've never heard of anything other than niqab in my life. I just didn't know of anything else. So it's not even an issue of them adopting another opinion and you giving them that freedom of thought. It's the issue of, you just just educating people in general. And then also the different levels, right? So the other day, for example, the other day I came to the masjid and there was an Egyptian brother leading the prayer. So he finished the prayer and he says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And I thought that was one of our staff. Okay, so I was going to wait to talk to him. And then I realized it wasn't. So it doesn't matter. Like the position that you say, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, it is a position. It's not a big deal. Why am I going to get into an argument about it or even correct it? The guy's just like a layman. It's not a big deal. Whereas if that was staff, it's different because that's now part of the message of the masjid or part of the message of the school that I'm involved in. So now it's a different thing totally. I can tell the person, you can do whatever you want. I respect that. But in your capacity as staff, please do this because you're making a statement, right? We want to keep to something that's within the form of dhahib. As far as I know, it's a weak position in the Shafi school and a weak position in the Hanbali school. And then I might be corrected. I might, subhanAllah, realize it is actually relied upon in the Hanbali school or whatever it is, you know. So things like that, or moving your finger up and down, right? Somebody wants to do that as by themselves, that's fine. But otherwise, I tell them, brother, the Maliki school is like this, the Shafi school is like this, the Hanbali school is like this, the Hanafi school like this. You want to do any of those, that's fine. Otherwise, you're kind of going off on a tangent and you're representing something that's not well known. That's dangerous. There's repercussions for that. The Allama and Imam Sayyid Ahmad Mashhur al-Haddad said, Scholars' consensus has established that it is unlawful to charge with disbelief anyone from the people of the Qibla. So here's another classic thing, right? It's ijma'. Everybody throws ijma' around, right? It's ijma' that Taraweeh is 20 rakats. No, it isn't. There's ijma' that, I don't know, you have to do this, that Allah is in the sky, that the Qibla is like this. Is ijma'? Like, no, there isn't. So often we hear things that this ijma' and it's not. Like I remember, hearing this from some of my own teachers, like it's ijma' on this, like there isn't ijma' on that. And so what they might mean is ittifaq, meaning the former dhahib agree, right? And now the philosophy or the idea then is why would you stick to the former dhahib? That's the discussion, right? Why is it necessary to stick to the former dhahib? That's something else. But there's ijma', the scholarly consensus, like nobody said anything else. It's not true. There's tons of things that are debated. So we have to be You know, my son the other day, yesterday, he's telling me, he said, Daddy, you know what happened with that, with the, he's like into snakes. He's like, you know what happened with that church and the snake? He's like, what is it? I said, yeah. Well, what they used to do is baptize people, and then once they got baptized, they'd have a snake bite them, and the snake wouldn't do anything to them, or it wouldn't harm them. And they say, look, it's because you come to the church, you're saved, right? So what they do is they remove the fangs of the cobra or whatever it is before. Um, before the snake bites them, and they'll be like, and so then obviously wouldn't do anything to them. And so what happens there, right? You're trying to increase people's faith by lying to them or not being super accurate. And it's just not very useful, right? It's just not very useful because they're going to find out and then that's all going to fall apart, right? So being extreme is never useful. You can sometimes edit information that's true, right? But editing too much or not being truly truthful, saying things like there's ijma on this, it leads people to go to extremes. Right? Everybody does this. It's not like that. Many things are debated, and that's fine. Etc. So scholarly consensus has been established. So when we say scholarly consensus, we can now break it down into like 18 categories, right? So someone says ijma. So what kind of ijma do you mean? So I mean, do you mean the Sahaba all verbally agreed on that? Or the Sahaba all did that? Or the Sahaba saw that and didn't say anything? So that's three variables there, right? And then you have Sahaba and not Sahaba, right? So that's six. And then each of those levels can be divided, it can be have now three levels. Is it mutawatir? Like it's a historical fact that the Sahaba all said this. It's a historical fact that the Sahaba all agreed on this. It's a historical fact that the Sahaba saw it, and some of them, and they didn't deny it, even though there was no threat of this, threat of that. So, for example, right, we as Sunnis, we say there's scholarly consensus that the Sahaba appointed Sayyidina Abu Bakr as the Khalifa, right? Shia, they say, yeah, that's because Sayyidina Ali didn't want to cause trouble. So they're going to say that's not ijma because when you say ijma sukuti, meaning everybody heard about it and nobody said anything about it, that is in conditions that, for example, you didn't fear harm or whatever, right? You weren't a Sahabi and you knew you were going to be killed if you said it or something like that. So, they would come up with that claim and we would say, no, obviously not. That's totally wrong. And there's many, many reasons. Again, I'm not trying to say promote Shiism at all. I'm just trying to help us kind of like play with this game of trying a bit more open-minded. Because the more open-minded you are, the easier to talk to people, right? So I'm talking to a Salafi and he's like, yeah, Quran Sunnah, 100% Quran and Sunnah, right? I totally understand. Like for me, for example, as an insider, somebody who's like studied Shafi fiqh, I totally understand why you would say to hell with the madhahib. May Allah protect us for saying that. They like just forget it because it is true. It is true that the madhahib are annoying and pedantic and very strict. It is true, but that doesn't make them wrong. And that also might be mean something else that is like. So there is a truth in that. There is a truth that the deen could be understood in other ways, right? And following madhab can be really annoying. So I understand why you're doing that. So now I'm talking to this person. The more I give him, the more he can listen. The less I give him, the less he can listen, right? So I'm going to put that on the table. I concede that certain positions in certain of the former madhab on certain issues get to a level of pedanticism, and they are annoying. However, right? There's lots of howevers. But when you don't put things on the table and you treat the other person as if they're just totally stupid, like every Shi'i is just a bad person. They're really bad and stupid and know nothing and have really bad adab. Right? There's not a very useful discussion. Every Christian is just an utter idiot who has no mind whatsoever and just likes denying God. Is that the case? It's not a very useful discussion. Right? It's just not a very useful. You say, I see where you're coming from. Right? I see why it's difficult, as a non-Muslim to connect with the person of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And this is the reasons why. I see there's an attraction to the person of Jesus. I see where you come from. But, right? So when you come to these issues and you say, oh, there's ijma' on this, like there isn't though, right? So you can say, for example, scholars, later scholars all agreed at a certain time that a non-mujtahid has to follow one of the four madhahib. That's true. That's true. But is that consensus? Which one of the 18? So they're saying there's consensus on this. Okay, which one of the 18 are you saying? You're saying the Sahaba or after Sahaba? And you're saying words or actions or that they didn't criticize? And are you saying that it's historical fact that the claim you're making is true? Or is it sahih that the claim you're making is true? Or is it da'if? Right? Okay. Um, Scholarly consensus has been established that it's unlawful to charge with disbelief anyone from the people of the Qibla, someone who faces the Qibla, except in a matter which contains denial of the all-powerful Creator, or clear idolatry that does not carry the possibility of interpretation, or denial of prophethood, or denial of that which is known to be from the religion necessarily, ma'lum min ad-din bil-darura, right? Necessarily known to be religion. So again, people throw this around. I remember speaking to a scholar, he said, yeah, he gave me an answer, he said, yeah, what I'm saying is ma'lum min ad-din bil-darura. This is just so obvious. So obvious to whom? Right? So ma'ali, when you're talking about this person left Islam by denying something that is ma'lum min ad-din bil-darura, that is known necessarily the religion. Well, hang on a minute, I didn't know about that. I've never heard, I don't even know about anything about inheritance. No idea. And they say, well, it's necessarily known to every single person. It's so obvious that if somebody passes away, leaving behind themselves a daughter and a granddaughter from their son, that the granddaughter from the son will get a sixth, while the daughter will get a half. It's not obvious to me. I've never studied inheritance in my life, right? And as we get closer and closer to the end of time, hijab, for example, say, oh, I didn't know hijab was obligatory, or I didn't even know what hijab meant. Like I thought hijab meant you put something on your head. So as long as something is on my head, even though most of my hair is exposed, I thought that was hijab. And somebody comes along and says, no, that's kufr, right? Because that's ma'loom bin ad-din bil-darura. It's not ma'loom to me. I didn't know that. I had no idea what you're talking about. Right? People know so little about Islam. Some things are like that. I know somebody who was like a former board member of a masjid. They didn't know the Prophet ﷺ ever practiced polygamy. Like subhanallah, right? And they grew up in a Muslim country. They thought polygamy meant that the permissibility to divorce. So again, you could say it's ma'loom min ad-din bil-darura that divorce exists in Islam and that polygamy exists in Islam, but he didn't know that, despite the fact that he's religious, despite the fact that he prays Fajr in the masjid, despite the fact that he grew up in a Muslim country, right? So he's not denying something, he just didn't know that. He just, or never understood it, was never explained to him, or whatever it is. Or clear idolatry that does not carry the possibility of interpretation, or denial of prophethood, or denial of that which is known to be from the religion by necessity, or denial of that which is reported by multiple chain transmission, mutawatir, as opposed to not mutawatir. What has been unanimously agreed to be from the religion by necessity. Right? So they all agreed upon it, but you didn't know they all agreed upon it. You had never heard of it. Right? Anyone who denies that which is known to be from the religion by necessity, such as the divine oneness, the finality of Prophet Muhammad, the resurrection of the day, the account, the recompense, paradise and heaven and hell, is a disbeliever. None of the Muslims are excused for ignorance therein, save the one who is a recent convert to Islam. And we're all recent converts to Islam. The fact that you grew up in the 21st century or the 20th century, you're a convert to Islam. Right? I remember asking an Egyptian, I said, when was slavery abolished in Egypt? He was like, huh? You mean in the time of Pharaoh? I was like, subhanallah. Right? That's particularly in the Middle East. Like Middle East have been stripped of their history. They don't know what happened yesterday. Intentionally, right? Intentionally, they don't know what happened yesterday. Never knew completely. So many people like that. They just study Western, that they study history from a Eurocentric world. They don't even know what happened to them to themselves. Yeah, no idea about anything. Tawatur is the transmission of information that is narrated by a large group whose mass narration precludes the possibility of their likes gathering upon a lie, who have in turn handed it down to a group similar to themselves. Right? So yesterday, Omar, were you in the class yesterday? Or Badr, who was in the class yesterday? We did the hadith, for example, we did hadith in Takhrij, we did hadith, like trying to find the hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, actions are only by attention. So like, who has never heard of that hadith in their life? إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, actions are only by intentions. Anybody? So the concept is there in the Quran, it's there in hadith. I think, you would be surprised if you bumped into a Sahabi who wasn't familiar with the concept, but you would not be familiar with the Sahabi who had not heard the hadith, because the hadith is not widespread. It was not rated like that. The hadith was told by Sayyidina Umar to uh, uh, Alqama ibn Waqqas. So that's one Sahabi telling one Tabi. We told it to, what's his name? Ibrahim ibn Muhammad at-Taymi, I believe. And from him to the judge of Medina, Yahya ibn Sa'id and Ansari. From him, it became widespread all over the place. But we don't know, so that means it was not widespread in the time of the Sahaba, because otherwise somebody else would have said it. Nor is it widespread in the time of the early Tabi'in, otherwise somebody else would have narrated it. So, right. So that's not, it's not mutawatir, even though for us it's like, oh yeah, I've heard of that hadith, but that doesn't make it mutawatir, right? It doesn't make it mutawatir, means it's a historical fact. It's impossible there's a lie. So that hadith is not impossible that it's a lie. It's possible. It's very, very, very unlikely that it's a lie. It's not impossible that it's a mistake. So tawatur is the transmission of information that is narrated by Allah. And so again, if you talk about to an Orientalist would say, yeah, this whole stuff is made up. Basically, something happened in the Middle East 1,400 years ago that created a civilization. That civilization, in retrospect, wrote its own history and created chains of transmission and basically self homogenized itself. Like everything they agreed upon was like, just kind of they kind of agreed upon it bit by bit. And then they created a basis for that unified idea of deed. And we say that's totally wrong. We can totally disprove it on many levels. They have this idea of like cutting out anything that's fringe will be cut out, and then you just keep making authorities internally for yourself, right? And there's very huge reasons why that's totally, totally wrong, and very easy to disprove, but that's their argument. So this person, and then there's something people just not aware of, right? So I'm a practicing Muslim. I did anthropology at some American University of Cairo, and I don't know anything about hadith science. All I know is shuyukh are religious, but I don't know anything. I've never seen elm, like critical thinking among scholars. Like in my mind, critical thinking only exists in the West, and critical thinking does not exist among Muslims, period. That's just how it is. So now when I just listen to a sheikh, in my head, that is the historical assumption that everything he's saying is just well-intended, religious activity. There's no actual criticism. Like I didn't even know that hadith, you can criticize a hadith. Like hadith criticism exists. Never heard of it. I thought, like, for example, fiqh is just based on, there was one of my friends, he said, before I studied, I thought in the whole of Islam there were two books, like just two books. The Quran and Riyadh al-Salihin. Like that's all that exists. Like if as a Muslim scholar, the only you have two books on your shelf, Riyadh Salihin and the Quran, and that is it. There is no other book. Doesn't even exist. So fatwa presumably just comes from that. Tajweed somehow comes out of that. All beliefs come out of that. And that's it, right? Whereas that's not true, is it? It's not true that we have all these we have critical thinking in Islam, but you weren't aware of it, and you were never exposed to that. You were exposed to the opposite. Your experience of a deen is recite after me. That's your experience of deen. So deen is either not good or bad Muslims, and you go to Quran class and you say repeat these sounds that you don't understand. And then there's academics, which is in the West, right? That's for like real, like science, like things you can actually know, as opposed to things that you can feel. Like that's the paradigm that's in your head. That religion is based on feelings and academics based on knowledge. And you didn't know that religion is based on knowledge, right? There's many people like that. They were not exposed to scholars, not exposed to knowledge, anything. So then you come along and say you're a kafir. It's like maybe they're a kuffar. Some of them are kuffar. Some of them are just like just super confused. I don't even understand what you're talking about, right? They don't even understand what you're talking about. Bit by bit now, things are changing. It's true, but they're just unbelievably confused. Excuse me, just give me a second, please. Or somebody who's unaware, for example, they're unaware of female Islamic scholarship, right? That's just they've never heard of it, so it doesn't exist. They're unaware of basic human things. You know, they understand that you cut people's hands off if they steal, and there's this imagery and that imagery, and there's no concept. They never understood that Prophet Muhammad was a nice person because they were never told that. They have no stories in their head about Prophet Muhammad SAW and mercy. So they just, in their mind, Islam is a bunch of rules. It's cold. It's cruel. It's misogynistic. And but if you don't believe it, you're going to go to hell. So I'm sorry, right? That's that, for many Muslims, that's what life is like, right? For many Muslims, that is how they view things, and it's just very confusing. It's when they say, "Oh, I'm this" or "I'm that," or I don't know what they say, or just they're confused. There's a lot of confusion. So now jumping to say you're a kafir, meaning you know Allah has sent this to you, but you don't accept it. That's a problem. It's a problem. Tawatur the transmission of information that is narrated by a large group whose narration precludes the possibility of their likes gathering upon a lie, who have in turn handed it down to a group similar to themselves. This tawatur is either by way of a chain of narration, such as the hadith, whoever intentionally lies about me, and let him take his seat in the hellfire. Or alternatively is by way of an entire generation, such as the generation of Quran, which has passed on by entire generations who learn, memorize, and recite. So here there's an assumption here now that there's no such thing as chain transmission. Right? The answer with the Quran is there are so many chain transmissions that the chain transmissions almost become arbitrary. Not arbitrary, they become superfluous, almost. And taught, and then also issue of corroboration, right? You can always confirm something. I just want to give you an example of this, just so you can see it. Some people have seen this before, some people haven't. Where is this? So you can have an idea. Right? So this is a hadith. This is a chain transmission for a hadith, right? That is not mass transmitted. Okay. So the hadith mentions that the Prophet ﷺ allowed some of the Sahaba to to wear silk while they were on a journey because they had a rash or something like that. So the hadith it goes from Anas. So Sayyidina Anas tells Qatada, Sahaba Tabi'i. Right? Qatada tells many people. We only have record of him telling three people. From those three people, it spreads, right? So in terms of corroboration, you found the hadith in Sahih Bukhari and in Sahih Muslim and Nasa'i and Abu Dawud and Ibn Majah and Tirmidhi. So Tirmidhi couldn't have made it up, that's for sure. You go to the previous generation, and we find Mahmud ibn Ghailan, Abu Bakr al-Nufayli, Ishaq ibn Rahaway, and others. These like what 10 people all corroborating. So they kind of made it up, right? So we go back to the previous generation. But these are all corroborating each other. So they couldn't have made it up. This person is corroborating this person corroborating that person. They're not part of one group, they're not in one place, etc. They couldn't have conspired to do that, right? Maybe they could, but it's very, very hard. But Qatada, could he have lied? Could he be a secret liar? Why not? It's extremely unlikely given that we know about his life. Extremely unlikely, right? Could Sayyidina Anas have made a mistake? Yeah. Sahaba make mistakes. So it's not a fact. It's not mutawatir. Even though it's widespread, you find it in the six books, you can clearly show that the six books are not made up. But look, right? But the only way to claim it is to say that Qatada made up the religion, right? He made this idea up, right? Because it can't be these three, and you can't say Qatada doesn't exist, right? And these six books, they're not like one team of people. They're not like one organization or something, right? So come along and say, um, no, it's a different Shu'bah. That Shu'bah is Abu Bakr al-Ayyash. That's his name, Abu Bakr al-Ayyash, and he is um, acceptable in hadith. But this is Shu'bah. This is a huge hadith critic. So, for example, in my world, I'm a hadith teacher. I know Shu'bah is like the, stuff. Well, I don't usually use the word, but the phrase like you'd use the kind of phrase in English you'd use in like son of a gun, like a real, like he doesn't like real cutthroat hadith critic. So the idea that Muslims very, very early on were very critical of their sources is really important. You were never aware of that. You just thought well-intended people have been going to the mosque since who knows when, right? And you just see Islam as that's my culture. I like going to Eid. Whether it's true or not, who knows? Because at the end of the day, I studied in the West, and what do we know about history anyway? Maybe Prophet Muhammad is like, you know, don't want to mention it, but maybe he's a bit like Robin Hood. You know, there was obviously a problem in England at the time, and people reacted a certain way to the government. Was there somebody who was actually called Robin Hood? I don't know. Can we ever prove it? Not really. Is it a good idea? Yes. Will I support it? Yeah. If you had a Robin Hood organization, I'd go to it. But whether he's true an actual person or not, whether he said this or said that, who knows? Right. So there are Muslims like that because they were never aware of anything. So you say you're a kafir because you don't even believe in Islam. Say it's true, you don't believe in Islam, you're a kafir. But this person is more ignorant. then kafir, right? So you have to understand that. This is coming more and more to the fore now, right? People just don't know anything, and the basic knowledge is not provided. Whereas in the past, alim, right? Alim. When you say when you sit with this mufti of the past, he's a philosopher, he's a this, he's a that. He's like obviously he's super intelligent, and these scholars of the past were revered by Muslims and non-Muslims alike. And so it was obvious in your mind that there is something called rigor, academic rigor that creates the deen, and so you trust him. But you've never seen academic rigor ever in the Muslim world. You're never exposed to it, never heard of it. So you just, you know, just don't know. Bismillah, go ahead. We have two questions, I believe. Go ahead, Badr.
I'm sorry, what is this chart depicting?
This is depicting an example of a hadith and how the hadith spreads and how
So,
you find the hadith in the six books here, 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 and it's kind of like mutawatir, right? It's widespread here, but if you go to the time of the tabi'een or the Sahaba, it's not widespread at all. So it's not mutawatir, and there is room for error in it.
oh, okay, so it's saying Anas marfu'a
Marfu'a
said,
means saying Anas narrating from the Prophet ﷺ. So what it means is
okay,
you're going to find, you open Nasa'i and you're going to find Nasa'i narrating from Ishaq ibn Rahaway, Ishaq ibn Rahaway narrating from Isa ibn Yunus, Isa ibn Yunus narrating from Sa'id ibn Abi Aruba, Sa'id ibn Abi Aruba narrating from Qatada, Qatada narrating from Anas, and Anas narrating from the Prophet ﷺ.
okay, I understand.
Right?
Okay,
So down
Jazakallah khair.
here, the point is, you come and claim that Nasa'i fabricated this hadith. That's impossible because there's all
Mm-hmm.
this corroboration. So he can't have made it up. Like it's not like some kind of like Nasa'i religion that he created, and he was working for this government person. And they tried to create their own sect of Islam. It's like that's not possible. But you could claim it here, right? At least you can. There's some room to claim it here. But at least there's only one person saying that. So this is an example of what is not mutawatir, right? It's not mutawatir. But for when something is mutawatir, this level of density that you see on the bottom continues all the way to the top. It's not one person that tells you the Prophet recited the Fatiha, or one person the Prophet says that they prayed 3 rakats of Maghrib. It's like everybody did it all the time. That's it. And so you can't come along and say, oh, it's this generation that invented it, right? Or that generation, or whatever. You can't do that. Does that make sense? Did somebody else have a question?
Yes.
So again, a hadith like this, I disagree with you on a hadith like this. Okay, but the hadith is in the six books. I know, but that doesn't make it true. That makes it most likely true. So I'm making it dogmatic about something that if you understand what it is, it's not an issue that should be dogmatic. It's not crystal clear. It's not like that. So that's a key thing in all scholars' minds is yeah, there's things that we think and there's things that we know. Simple. So why am I going to label you as a kafir when you're saying something that doesn't is not necessarily false? Right? You can't do that at all. Or that you, and the point I was laboring before was that it is necessarily false, but you're just confused about a number of things. Right? You're not actually rejecting the message. You're just like super confused about, I don't know. Like there's a scholar or this individual, he said, we take sunnah from the sunnah, i.e., and we take ahkam from the form of dhahib. I was like, what does that even mean? Ahkam. Ahkam means rulings, right? Is it sunnah? Is it recommended? Is it halal? Is it haram? That's ahkam, right? A statement. Is it good or is it bad? Is it valid, not valid? And it's like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, what do you mean by sunnah? You mean hadith? So yeah. So you don't take halal and haram from hadith? Like, so he says something, and this is like a practicing Muslim that doesn't make any sense. Like, he doesn't have a tasawwur, doesn't have a proper picture in his head of what he's talking about. So, finding somebody else who says something like totally crazy, like, oh my God, did you just say that? And so some of these people, again, it's not kufr, it's just they don't understand what on earth they're talking about. Or they've never been exposed to what you've been exposed to. It's often the case that, certain Muslims growing up in the 20th century or 21st century have more exposure to certain things than somebody growing up in the early 20th century. They were never shown anything. There was like the dean wasn't a, they didn't, the only exposure they had to like something that was functioning was a Western world. And they never saw functioning Muslims and functioning, yeah, academic Muslims and mercy and this and that. It's just like, never saw what you, that we, that what something, they didn't have an Ummah study, man. They didn't have that. They never understood anything about the religion. They grew up in post-Soviet, Albania or something like that. And you're talking to them and like everything in their head is confused. And there are other people who understand, but they're still kuffar, right? So there is a distinction. There are people that you're not confused. You just don't believe in the message. Like you understand what I'm saying very clearly. You just don't believe in the message. Okay? Inshallah, we'll stop here. We'll continue. So please, everybody, get the book. We're not going to read the whole book. We're not going to have time. So please read the book. Get the book. We will, maybe do one or two or three more lessons on the first section, etc. And so please get the book. Buy the book. Buy two copies. Give a copy to somebody else, or have two copies in the future, whatever it is, to give somebody who needs it. And read along from where we've got to and beyond. And inshallah, next week we'll continue. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحان الله وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك